Hello and welcome to the July edition of the Columbia League of Women Voters Community Affairs Program. My name's Randy Picht and I'm the Executive Director of the Donald W. Reynolds Journalism Institute. And tonight we're going to be talking about moving people economically and efficiently around our metropolis. We're going to be talking about the new CoMo Connect service, which makes its debut on August 4th, and we have three folks who know as much as anybody can know about that topic. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves, so take it away.
Okay, thanks, Randy. Well, my name's Ian Thomas. I'm the City Council representative for the 4th Ward. I've been a supporter of public transit for my whole life, and particularly an effort to improve and increase the service of public transit here in Columbia.
My name is Drew Brooks. I'm the multimodal manager for the City of Columbia. I oversee the transit division and the airport for the city. I've worked in the transit division for about 6 years now and have been, I guess you'd say, the figurehead or the architect helping develop the new CoMo Connect routes and the new system.
My name is Steve Hansen. I'm the chair of the Public Transit Advisory Commission for the City of Columbia, and been working closely with Drew and the City Council for the past few years, working on improving the transit opportunities in Columbia. So we're very excited to have this mature into something here very shortly. So
that's great. So I know we've seen that there's a new logo, and there were some very creative bus shelters that were sort of on the drawing board. But perhaps, Drew, you could start and maybe talk a little bit about some of the nuts and bolts of
Sure.
what we're going to see August 4th.
Sure. So the easiest way to describe what we're doing is maybe to start with what we're replacing. So the current bus system is something that's referred to as an orbital pulse system. What that means is that the buses orbit out from one transfer location. They go out and they come back to that same location, so they pulse out. That's a very good system for a very small city. It's not a very good system for a city the size of Columbia. It's really an artifact of a community that doesn't exist anymore. And so there were a couple of big problems with that. Number one, all buses were contingent that they had to be on the same time scale. So they all had to go out and come back at the same time. So you couldn't reach certain areas of the city and be very efficient with them. But also, if one route was late, one bus was late, then all buses were late because they were waiting for transfers from all those other buses. So we had some pretty serious problems with timing and reaching people in the community. So by removing that system, not having one central location for transfers, we went to a networked system, much like you would see in any major metropolitan city. It would be much easier if we were laid out like a grid, but our city is not laid out like a grid and is, of course, bisected by two major highways, so it doesn't really quite work quite the same. But we used a modified system, and the CoMo Connect system is two core connector routes, one east-west, north-south. Those routes go in both directions, and they operate roughly on a 15-minute in peak service. Every 15 minutes a bus will pass a given location depending on what side of the street you're on. And then attached into those are 7 neighborhood routes and 1 downtown orbiter, and then also a commuter route in the north. Those routes operate between 30 and 40-minute schedules in peak service and circulate in and out of certain neighborhoods. And we designed those neighborhood routes such that should a person not have to get across town, they could do most of their daily business on one of those neighborhood routes. So there's a grocery store, a medical facility, banking, and other shopping needs on one single route. So unless they need to get across town, where they would catch one of those core commuters, or connectors, I mean, then they might just be able to stay in their own neighborhood route and do their daily business.
And this all starts August 4th.
That's correct.
Right?
August 4th, 25 days, 11 hours, we were saying. We're counting it down a little bit.
Counting,
yeah.
but except for Drew.
That's right. That's right.
So, Ian, how does this, in terms of some of the comments you've heard from constituents or just from Columbians in general, what are some of the points you think this addresses for people that use the bus system and count on the bus system?
Well, I think from a configuration point of view, the thing that I really like about it and that a lot of constituents like about it is that the buses are going to have a much stronger presence in many of the neighborhoods where people live and work and recreate and so on. The old orbital pulse system, because all of the buses came back to the central hub right here in downtown Columbia every 40 minutes, they ended up spending a lot of time in the central city, where honestly, you actually don't need so much of a bus service. It's quite walkable and things are kind of closer together. Out in the more outlying neighborhoods, they didn't spend very much time. Now, as Drew says, there are going to be 7 neighborhood routes, and those buses will be spending all of their time in a particular kind of quadrant of the city, circulating through a neighborhood. So people are going to see the buses a whole lot more, and they're going to have better access to those buses. We've gone from a system that really had just 2 transfer points, the Wabash station, and then there was a unique little transfer point down south that connected to a south commuter route. We're going to go to, I don't know, Drew, is it?
It's over 40.
Over 40 transfer
Wow.
points. So this makes an enormous increase in the flexibility of the different journeys that you can construct.
Wow.
And whereas in the past, you pretty much had to go through the central hub and out again in a different direction for most journeys that you wanted to do, now there are much more efficient ways to get from one corner of town to the other.
And truthfully, multiple different ways. As we've sat down with our customers, we're doing a lot of kind of open houses where people can come in and we'll do travel training with them. It's really interesting because they'll say, well, I need to get from point A to point B typically, and we'll show them and they'll go, well, couldn't I also do it this way? And it's really kind of surprising all the different ways that people have figured out that they can do that. Well, you know what, this day I'll go here because I want to stop at this place on my way. So I think we've provided a system now that's, as you said, much more flexible. People can make a lot of different choices about how they get across town.
Lots of choices.
Yeah.
Lots of things to think about. So Stephen, I'll ask you the challenging question. So what is the big challenge with the new system in terms of making people aware of how this is going to work? Because it is very different than what they're accustomed to, right? Fair to say?
There's 2 major issues that our riders face right now. And Drew pointed to the first one, which is really trying to get our existing riders over, overcoming the fear of trying to go to something new. They've been very used to what we've had in the past, and going to something completely different has been something that not everyone has embraced, but they've embraced many of the other parts of the plan, such as expanded hours, that are really quite necessary for the system. So, but they've done a tremendous job in working with different groups to help do the educational opportunities to help these people out to overcome these objections. And really, the other thing that we need, that we're going to focus on is trying to, increase the ridership as well. And that makes people, try to get people to become more comfortable with riding the bus. I think a lot of us tend to be very schedule oriented. I need to be at work in 10 minutes. It takes me 5 minutes to get there. I can, we think in those, short minute terms, trying to plan a little bit more ahead of time so that we don't have to, to catch a bus. Will take some getting used to for some people. Other people embrace it a little bit more quickly. I know I'm particularly looking forward to having bus service not only a little bit closer to my home, but one that will have expanded hours so that I can work past 6 o'clock at night. Not as much as I would like to work past 6 o'clock at night, but I know that it's going to happen on more than one occasion.
Hopefully your boss isn't listening to this today.
So now, in addition to the new routes, there's expanded hours.
So we're doing a little bit of a shift in the hours. So right now in the current system, we've kind of got a mess, if you will, of how the schedule works. We have 3 days of the week, Monday through Wednesday, where we end the service at about 6:25 in the evening. Then on Thursday and Friday, we run until about 9 o'clock, and then Saturday's a completely different time as well. We thought that was really confusing, and we ought to just kind of level that out. And so what we're going to do is Monday through Saturday, we'll end at 8 p.m. All 5 days of the week. So we'll just kind of shift some of those hours around and make it more usable for folks, so that it's not that they just have to come home. They can do a few things after work before they have to come home in the evening. So we think that's going to be a big factor. Obviously, as Steve mentioned, the big things that our customers are looking for is expanded service hours. They'd like to have Sunday service, which we don't currently have. And those are steps that we're kind of pre-positioning this system so that we're very easily do that should we find some funding options that'll help us achieve those goals.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned you've had some open houses to sort of get people acquainted with the system. if somebody's watching tonight, are there some open houses coming up?
Absolutely.
Or anything at big employers? Or maybe you
Sure.
could talk about
Sure. So if you go to our website at comoconnect.org, right down the left-hand side, you'll see a list of all of those different classes and open houses that we're having. The big one that's coming up is on Thursday evening. We're having one from 5 to 8 at the Wabash Station, so it's just a walk-in. There'll be people there set up with tables and schedules and a big map on the wall where we can kind of walk you through your typical trip, kind of show you, how to get from point A to point B. One of the great things is as we've done this, for most people, it's just they've kind of had that realization when we sit down with them and we kind of help them get that fear taken away, because most of them go, oh, it's still just one transfer, right? They kind of just saw, well, I'm just going to be transferring somewhere else. So, it's not, it's once the light goes on, then we've kind of done our job at that point, because people then are comfortable and they don't feel like it's too big a change for them.
Yeah. So, Ian, one of the issues, if I were running a transit system, the things I would think about are how do we cut costs and how do we increase ridership? So I know it's not that simple, Drew, but do you think that this new system is going to help in both regards, one regard more than the other, and maybe how?
Well, I don't know that it's going to cut costs. It's essentially a budget neutral reallocation, and I think that Drew and his staff have done a brilliant job of taking the existing transit budget, which is a very shoestring budget. If we can compare ourselves with most similar college towns of a similar size in the Midwest, then we are starving our transit system, really.
Okay.
We have not figured out a way to fund it to the level it needs to be. And to kind of underscore that, I do a lot of surveys with constituents through my newsletter and website. And on one of them, I gave them several options and asked them to characterize Columbia Transit as it is right now. And the most popular option was it's a transportation service for people who don't have a car, maybe for college students, maybe for sort of people who are philosophically supportive of public transit. And that got a whole lot of votes. The option that it is a well-designed, economical, environmentally sensible system to move everybody around the town got very few votes. When I asked the second question, what do you think Columbia Transit should be, the numbers flipped. Wow. So people want a service that they can use. At the moment, because of the headways, the time between buses, the limited hours, the lack of Sunday service, really the only people riding the bus are people that have no other choice. I do think that CoMo Connect is a really important first step towards creating that system that is going to work well for a whole lot more people and start to rival the private car as a means of getting downtown, especially as sort of congestion increases and so on. The bus will become a better option. But it is just a first step, and one of my goals as a member of the City Council, and it really is shared by the whole City Council, is to find additional funding so that we can expand this service further into the future.
And is that from the federal government or from the state, which you shouldn't go asking for now?
Right. Well,
maybe next
interestingly,
year. Okay.
actually, maybe I'll answer that in a minute, but talking about the state, you want to just tell people about your meetings with MoDOT?
Sure. So currently, we receive the exorbitant sum of $20,000 a year from the state of Missouri for public transportation. That's probably at near the very bottom of the 50 states as far as funding for public transportation, and that's just indicative of Missouri in general. I think with funding for transportation in general, and we're just kind of the tallest midget or something in there. I don't know how that works out, we get very little. However, MoDOT has this proposal forth now that will be voted on August 5th, as you mentioned, that would provide a significant amount of funding for transportation. It is a sales tax. It goes to the voters. We have had a very long process where we've sat down here in the central division of MoDOT and talked about the allocation of funds of what, if that should pass, that 3/4% sales tax should pass, how would that funding be distributed in the central division? And it was I would say a very hard-fought battle, but we secured that Columbia Transit, or CoMo Connect as will now soon be called, would receive about a little over $1 million a year over that 10-year time frame. So should this pass, that's a pretty significant change. I think not a mathematician, but $20,000 versus $1 million is a pretty big change. So I think that would be a pretty significant change for us. And there's obviously a lot of philosophical discussion about how this sales tax is going to impact a lot of different people. But that is an option that's out there that would give us some significant funding from the state.
So that's really two key dates here. August 4th is when CoMo Connect makes its debut, and then August 5th is when there's a big vote that could affect the future of CoMo Connect.
And Randy, I think that the fact that MoDOT has taken the step of putting a very significant amount of funding for Central District and Columbia in particular in transit, as opposed to highways and bridges, which is their traditional way of spending millions of dollars, is really very significant. And there is a public opinion sea change throughout Columbia and throughout the state going on, and that is very much reflected here. I want to emphasize what Drew said. There are some serious concerns from my personal point of view with the sales tax for transportation. It will end up, although Columbia will do very well for transit, across the state, it'll still be the vast majority of those funds going to highways and bridges. That'll turn out as it turns out. We're not really kind of talking about this, but you had asked me earlier about the sort of long-term future of funding for transit. And so in addition to the sales tax proceeds, if that passes, Columbia City Council has been looking at a number of options, and the one that we're looking at most carefully right now is the idea of a utility fee. There are a number of cities, Springfield, Missouri is one, and Corvallis, Oregon is another one, that fund a big part of their transit systems with a utility fee. The way this would work in Columbia is it would be, most likely, it would be a flat fee, monthly fee on the utility bill that every household receives, somewhat like trash service. Everybody pays, I don't recall how much it is, but a certain amount every month. So it would be a monthly fee, and that would go to the CoMo Connect Transit utility. Concurrent with that, depending on the political support for that idea and also the amounts we're talking about, there is the possibility that we could move to a fare-free system. And that, in fact, is done in Corvallis and was done at the same time that they brought in this utility fee. So every household would pay. Actually, not quite every household would pay. I think we would want to create a threshold for low-income households where the fee would be avoided.
Right.
But most households would pay, and everybody would then ride free on the system. And that's a model that we're looking at possibly in about 2 years' time.
Well, and that sort of affects the idea about building up the ridership, because one reason to build up the ridership is to make more money, and certainly be more useful to more people. But do you guys have things on the drawing board to do that? Or maybe you could start by telling us who rides the bus now.
So I think that Mr. Thomas has spoken very, very clearly about that right now I would say the vast majority of our riders are folks who really don't have any other option but to use public transportation. They either don't have a car because they don't have the means to own a car, or through disability or some other reason couldn't drive. We do have a significant amount of our riders that are students because there's obviously some pretty heavy population density at those apartment complexes, and we've designed routes over the years that really hit those areas very, very clearly. And so a significant amount of our rides are student riders, and that millennial generation is the one that's really going to ride the bus in the future. They're already getting their driver's licenses at slower rates than ever before. They've expressed the desire to live in population dense areas with good public transportation. So we definitely want to capture them as well. But I kind of look at it as a continuum. You have the folks who they have no choice but to ride the bus. And on the other end, there's probably some people that I may never convince to ride the bus. But in the middle, there's a lot of folks that I would refer to as transit curious. They haven't really thought about it a lot, but they kind of see a bus and they think they like the idea, but they just don't know. And that's who the folks that we really want to see if we can get to make a choice to come into the system. And you do that by creating a system that's convenient, first and foremost. If it's not convenient, they're not going to do it. But we're not asking necessarily that people give up their car immediately. What we're asking is, let's try it out. Let's come in, and that's why that whole month of August, we're going to have this system be free. So there'll be no fares for the month of August, and anybody can try it out, at any time, and kind of get the feel for whether this is going to work for them. And I think what you'll find is that people will start to say, you know what, I could replace these 3 or 4 trips a week. Instead of using my car and worry about parking and all those things, maybe I'll try the bus this time around. So if we can start making that, kind of working away at that, bit by bit, I think that we'll start seeing people make the choice to use transit, which we don't currently have right now.
And are there sort of some goals in mind in terms of how you're going to increase readership? No,
Ridership.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
Ridership.
Yeah. Well, we hope that people would bring a book and read on the bus.
Yeah. How about a newspaper?
We're all a newspaper or whatever. Yeah, we're all for that, for reading on the bus as well. So we're very modest at this point because we think that there is the possibility that initially we might see a little drop off in ridership just because it's a change, and that might happen. But we're optimistic that won't happen. From what we're seeing some pretty significant numbers of folks who are coming to us who are saying, I have never ridden the bus, but this looks like it might work for me. And so that's really, really encouraging. A lot of young professionals that are kind of like, yeah, I think I could do this. So we're hoping that means that we'll see some increases. In 2010, we made some very modest changes to the current system and saw an over 10% growth in ridership. We don't know what the limit is, to be honest. We'd love to see significant growth, but we're going to just kind of play that very close to the vest and hope for the best, I think.
So, Stephen, one of the things Drew was talking about is Sunday service would be a nice thing to add. Are there other things on your wish list?
I think, from our discussions we've had with the community, really first and foremost really is expanding hours of service and days of service. So, but beyond that, what I would like to see is the system be able to really have a demonstrable effect on vehicle miles traveled within the city of Columbia. My goal, my long-term goal is, the traffic that I experience going around campus during the summer is the traffic that we experience year-round.
Oh, that's
Now,
an ambitious
I think
gold.
It would be a very ambitious goal, but I think that was, if we had something, even we're made a significant dent in the traffic that's experienced in downtown Columbia during the school year, I think many people would be very happy with that. That's trying to have a visible effect on what's going on. But most importantly, I think trying is to, at this point in time, and in the short term, is to really have more of a community buy-in, that where people really feel some more ownership to the system. They feel that it's accessible to them. They feel that they are welcome on the bus, and that it is not something that will affect them negatively. That they will have positive feelings about the bus system. And I think that the efforts that Drew has done and his staff have really, I think they're improving the overall brand of the transit system at this point in time, which will really make gains and to get to that point where we can, where no one's really, where we don't have to overcome an image issue at all to get somebody on a bus. It's, the issue, I can solve, it's very easy for me to solve an issue of, whether or not a bus comes close to you. Relatively speaking, that's easy. But, it's much more difficult to get you on a bus if you just don't want to be on there because you just, you're scared of the bus, or you don't want to be associated with it, or something along those lines. So once we're able to convince people that it's okay, I'm very happy at that point in time. Then we can do a lot more, I think.
So that's the first step. Well, it sounds like this whole program is going to be a big foundation to new things. And are we going to get those bus shelters that were?
Yeah.
so
We're actually so we've closed that public participation process on that project. So we had 7 groups of students as part of the Sustainable Technologies class at the University of Missouri, who took it on as a class project to design sustainable bus shelters for us. And all 7 designs were absolutely outstanding. And so we turned that over to the public and said, hey, vote on these. What do you think? We also established a jury that came in and they made a vote as well. And we haven't revealed that yet, but we'll be sitting down and kind of putting those two things together and deciding, okay, do we want to build more than one of these, or do we want to maybe focus in on one and go that way? But I think when it's all said and done, we'll be choosing something from that group and hopefully getting those out on the street here in the next few months. It's going to be a long process. That'll probably take us 6 to 8 months to start getting those all out there. You're talking about pouring concrete and doing some groundwork to get those all in place. But we're very excited about that possibility. We really wanted to bring the different student populations into the mix. Our branding was designed by Stevens College, by the Creative Inc. group. And they did just absolutely, I mean, we've said it a couple of times, they hit it out of the park for us, and we're really, really happy with the branding effort that they did for us. So, and then of course, Columbia College helped us with some research as far as kind of funding options and comparing us to other cities. So we really want to kind of bring all those different student populations into the mix and hopefully get their buy-in on what we're doing. And I think we're getting there.
That's great.
One thing that that City Council is doing to try to create a student body of the future that's more positively oriented towards transit, because our current MU population, is a predominantly driving student population. But one thing we're doing, starting August 4th with the launch of CoMo Connect, is we're going to make riding the bus system free for all school students up to the age of 18 with a student ID. And this will enable mostly probably middle school and high school students to get to and from school potentially, but mostly to attend before school and after school programs, and to travel for recreational and leisure and entertainment activities in the evenings or on Saturdays, hopefully on Sundays when we get a Sunday service. The interesting statistic is that about 50% of graduating Columbia Public School students end up at Mizzou. And so as these young people get more acclimatized to CoMo Connect and the bus system, we think that they will carry that with them as they go to college, and will sort of shift the culture at the university.
Yeah, I think if you could get them to just think about it. Right now, they don't even probably think about it. They think about getting in the car or something like that. One thing, we're almost out of time, but I did want to ask, how are you coordinating with all the other buses? The school buses that go to the high schools and the buses that go to the apartments?
Well, there's actually only a little bit of coordination that goes on there. Some of those private shuttles, we're working with the university to kind of find better places for them to pick up and drop off, so that we can have kind of a much clearer path in and out of campus there. So that's a process that we're working through currently. As far as with the school district, we really don't coordinate much with that. We're actually prohibited to provide what would be considered school bus type service by the federal government, and there's a long story behind that. So the coordination there is rather minimal. What we're really trying to do is we do provide access to all 3 high schools. The routes that go to those 3 high schools are color-coded to those high school colors as well.
But they can't go into the school grounds?
We can go on to, or we will actually at Battle High School actually be going on to the school grounds, but it can't be strictly a kind of school bus service. It has to be really just a regular bus service
regular
that happens
route
to go there.
happens
Right,
to go
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You have to be clever sometimes
That's right.
when dealing with federal regulations.
That's right.
And I think it's an important gap to fill in. I know that many of the parents in Columbia have come across this, where they're within the not within the busing boundaries of their school, so they need to somehow get their child across busy roads to the school they need to, and that's one of the things that we kept in mind when going through through the process of designing the new routes was, how can we get the students within the 2-mile radius to the school as well? And honestly, if you're not close enough, Drew will take your call, and we'll try to adjust the routes as we can if we have demand.
Put Drew's number on the screen right now, his email, his
Right.
Twitter account, and everything like that.
Right.
Well, I think you should say it again, all the details about when it's going to start and the website, how people can get information.
Right, so you can get all the information at comoconnect.org. The system starts on August 4th, will be in full effect, and in the entire month of August, can't say this enough, will be free for everyone. So we really want you to get out there and try it, make a day of it, and try all the different routes, and we would really love to see as many people give it a try.
Okay. Okay, well, I want to thank our panel, and that concludes this month's edition of League of Women Voters from Columbia. Thank you.